Everybody, I think we have quorum.
Mhm.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, and then could we have roll call, please?
All right, Alejandra. Just a moment, I've got an echo over here. All right, is that better? You can hear me okay? All right, Asia. Just saw. All right, Claire.
Here.
Kirsten. Matt.
Here.
Rob.
Here.
Scott. Colt. Scott, you're still muted, but I see you on. Scott Oldendorf.
Here.
Steve Foley.
Here.
And Eric.
Here.
All good?
Did you call Rob?
Yes, I did.
Right. So I would like to provide you with the virtual meeting reminders. Please mute your microphones. This will ensure there's no feedback or background noises that may interfere with the speaker. If the committee member would like to speak and ask a question, please raise your hand. Use that feature on your computer. Remember to lower your hand once the question has been answered or you have finished. When you're ready to speak, don't forget to unmute your microphone. This is very important during votes. Do not forget to mute your microphone when you're finished. And as a reminder, audience members are only permitted to speak during the call to the audience unless called upon by the committee. And this meeting is being recorded to satisfy the open meeting law requirements. And next we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll follow that with call to the audience. Do we have any audience members that would like to speak at this time? Hearing none, we'll move to the safety share.
Even before that, I'm sorry to back up, but
Did I miss something?
well, just a couple announcements that we should probably bring up. That Allison Jones had to.
Yes. Did you want to
So
talk about that next?
in case any of you had not heard, Allison Jones, who was a fabulous member of this committee, had some external emergencies to deal with and had to resign her position on our board or on our committee. So we'll miss her because she always did a wonderful job of, updating us on CWAC, and she was the CWAC representative. And we've been informed that Alan Forrest will be taking her place. Some of you have met or recall Alan Forrest. He was previously also a director of Tucson Water and been involved in the local engineering community. But as soon as all his administrative activities are handled, he'll be joining us in the near future. So that was that one. And then I would just take that time also to introduce Kirsten. She's not new to this committee because she's been coming here and as a member of the community and the public and participating or listening to these meetings. But Supervisor Hines has appointed her to his representation. Armando Membrilla, who had been here for 20-something years, Dr. Hines had decided to go a different direction, and so we'll miss Armando, and he may show up as a member of the public if he can, but Kirsten will be taking over for him. And introduce yourself, say something.
I am Kirsten Watts. Tech in the Tucson office, and it's kind of like coming home for me because I started my career here at Pima County Wastewater when Jeff Cravat was in the lab, over the lab. I was out at IWC and doing special projects, so it's like coming home to me to start degree. So thank you.
All right, well, thanks and welcome aboard. Eric, you have your hand up.
Eric?
I was just going to go in on the I was gonna go in on the safety share when you're ready.
I would just like to say a welcome to Kirsten. It's great you're going to be on this committee. That's awesome. And did everybody get a chance to read Allison's note to us? She was just a really remarkable participant. I always felt like I learned a huge amount from her presentation. But I'm super psyched also that Alan Forrest will be able to join us. I don't know if any of you remember him, but he's a great guy and he'll do a wonderful job, I'm sure, too. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents in there. Any other, let's see, let's move to safety share then. And did you have a comment then, Eric?
Yeah, one of the things in a previous life, I used to teach driver safety. And I was thinking about it the last couple of days is, situational awareness of where you are in the road base and what's happening out in front of you. What's happening behind you won't necessarily involve you, but what's happening out in front of you will. And a lot of people get stuck on just the car in front of them. And I would suggest that you look 3 or 4 cars out ahead of you just to see what they're doing, because they're going to dictate what the people right in front of you will do. That's all I have.
Thanks, Eric. And I'll just piggyback on Eric's because I had prepared one also. Again, it's exactly situational awareness. And, many things happen in the world around us and sometimes we're oblivious to it. But a couple of weekends ago, we had a domestic violence call, not us personally, but a neighbor adjacent to our conveyance building office over there at Dodge and Fort Lowell. And it involved a lot of shell casings. There was shooting going on. The police had cordoned off the area and tried to create a safe perimeter around that site. Unfortunately, we did hear that the domestic violence person took his own life in that incident. But it was on the weekend, but we had 2 members of our conveyance team who were on calls for conveyance emergencies or spills or any of that stuff. And they actually got called out. And so they came into the yard there at the same time, and they didn't know that was going on because it was on the back side of the property, the house right across the street. And the police saw, initially they saw an abandoned, shut down industrial site, our site. And then shortly thereafter noticed some people milling around over there. So they hurried up and came around and busted down our gate with their car just to get in there and get them to safety. And a good thing, because there were 3 bullet holes in our 2 in a door and 1 in a wall right adjacent to the door. So it was definitely a chaotic scene, and fortunately didn't happen during a weekday when you have a lot more people around. But fortunately, no innocent people were hurt. And it's just a good reminder, just like Eric said, situational awareness. Pay attention, not just to what you're dealing with, but pay attention around you sometimes. So that's it.
I'll do one too. So I don't know how many of you went out hiking recently. It is just absolutely stunning out there. But I would just suggest that don't forget to bring water and have a sun hat. And also there's a lot of mountain bikes on the trail. So share the trail and enjoy how it's a multi-use trail and we all get to be out there together. So that's just one of the things I've been thinking about lately, being safe out there and getting out.
And to piggyback on that, also watch where you're walking, because everything is waking up. Rattlesnakes are coming out. So be ready. The little ones are worse than the big ones.
Anybody else want to share a safety thing? All right. We're going to move on to approval of the minutes. I hope everybody had a chance to read the minutes. Are there any suggested changes? As usual, they're really thorough and it's great.
So move to accept the minute.
Motion to approve. And who was that? Was that Steve?
Eric, I think.
Oh, it was Eric. Okay.
Eric, was that you?
Yes.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
I think Kirsten was, but you got beat out. Just barely. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And the minutes are approved. Moving on to the discussion and action, we have one of my favorite presentations all year is this presentation by Carmine about the county legislative agenda. I always enjoy this, so I'm looking forward. I have my notepad. I'm going to take notes. So, thanks for coming.
Well, good morning, Chair and committee members. Happy to join you. So just a few days over a year since I last gave this presentation to you, and I'm appreciative of the opportunity to do so. I'm going to share my screen, and then I will get the slides over to Jeanette so that she can post them for all of you. Yeah. Let's see. All right, trying to open up and it's appearing on a different screen for me. Can you see this okay? I've got a PDF version as well. Let me see if that displays a little bit better. Okay, are you all able to see that just fine?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, well, good. And just as a reminder, the county has a legislative lobbying team. I think many of you know Michael Rossi. He's based here in Tucson. Michael has been on the county legislative lobbying team, I think, since I joined the county. I've just hit my 33rd year with Pima County. I think Michael's been around nearly that long doing legislative work for the county. And then he has a team of others who work on the federal level and assist us quite frequently. So I'm going to run you through briefly just some points about the county's legislative priorities, and then give you a glimpse into some of the goings on at the state legislature and flag for you some of the bills in the water space and also in the land use space. And I'm not going to go into specific detail on any of those, but with this document, you'll be able to go and check them out. And I'll talk a little bit about themes in both of those areas. So each year, the county administrator reaches out to our county departments and asks for identification of items of interest or desired changes in the upcoming legislative session. So we start that process in the early fall of the year prior to the legislative session. So for calendar year 24, we began that in the early fall of 23. And so in front of you on this slide are really the key priorities that the county administrator had laid out and the Board of Supervisors approved. Looking at them compared to 2023, they really are nearly identical. So the only one that changed slightly was that third one that says maintain or strengthen critical programs. And in 2023, it was really around health programs, but this is a little bit more broad. So things like affordable housing, early childhood education, those items were flagged by the county, and the county has been involved in a number of big initiatives in those areas, right? Addressing the unhoused population, creating more affordable housing supply in the community. There's an entire prosperity initiative that the county has adopted. It has 13 different points, many of them really geared towards addressing and eliminating generational poverty. If you haven't had a presentation on that and it's something of interest, Bonnie Bazada is able to come out and give a presentation to you and talk about all of those elements. It's really a framework. It's a regional framework. And so a lot of what we're focused on in the county budget effort that's ongoing right now, as well as approaching setting our legislative priorities, tie back to some of those big initiatives of the county. protect the Pima County taxpayer, right? That's the avoidance or minimizing of cost shifts from the state to the county. And so when the state has budgetary struggles, oftentimes they look to push expenses off, and we're unfortunately the recipient of that. Invest in Pima County's infrastructure. That has been a longstanding hallmark of our legislative agenda at the county. So transportation infrastructure has been key over the decades, and the issues of how do you maintain and construct transportation infrastructure, but that could be in any space related to infrastructure on a countywide or regional or statewide basis. I talked about critical programs and maintaining and strengthening those. Public safety obviously is always at the forefront of our board's mind and the county administrator's mind. And so, looking to stay active at the state level on things that deal with justice, law enforcement, the courts systems, and making sure that they are effectively structured, efficiently structured, and protecting, the safety of residents here in Pima County. And then the last one is support County Supervisors Association adopted legislative agenda. We are a member of the County Supervisors Association. They are a powerful entity on a statewide basis. All 15 counties have representation on that association, and they do a fabulous job both keeping us informed as well as lobbying on our behalf throughout the legislative session. I'm going to pause right here and see if there's any questions on the county legislative priorities before I go into some of the summary information involving bills at the state legislature. Okay, so hearing none, I'm going to move right along. So here we look at the 2024 session timeline. So this is the 56th legislature. This is their second regular session. Here are key dates pulled right off of the Arizona State Legislature website, and you can see that we're well through this. We just cleared down March 22nd. We just cleared the last day for bills to be heard in the House opposite where they were originated. So for the Senate bills to be heard in House committees and the House bills to be heard in Senate committees. So there are two dates listed there in April, which are upcoming, the last day for conference committees to meet and act. And then the 100th day of the session will be April 16th. Now, whether that concludes the session or not remains to be seen. Obviously, last year and other prior years, we've seen them go beyond that 100th day of session. So we'll all wait and see what happens in the upcoming month. Just giving you a snapshot of the session and the numbers of things. So March 24th was the 77th day of the session. And as of that date, there were 1,629 bills that were introduced, and slightly more in the House than in the Senate. And I looked at last year, and it's about 100 bills greater, right? Just less than 100 bills greater than where we were roughly at the same period of time last year. There's been a number of introduced memorials and resolutions. 130 of those have gone forward. And as of March 24th, there were 9 bills that were sent to the governor, 7 that were signed and 2 that were vetoed. And I've listed those items there if you have interest in going to take a look at it. I've given you a couple of different thematic areas in the legislative bills. So this one deals with land. So you see there's probably about a dozen bills involving things having to do with land. And you see most of them have originated out of the House, and they're really focused on the state subdivision and land division requirements. I think many of you are familiar with the Rio Verde community up in Maricopa County, where water became an issue. They were receiving water from the city the city of Scottsdale. And then that water service was discontinued, leaving residents in a difficult situation. And so that has drawn a lot of attention. This, whole theme here is dealing with lot splits and subdivision requirements. So you see a couple of different bills right there at the top, HB 2006, and then, a little bit about a quarter of the way down, HB 2009, subdivisions and real estate acting in concert. That's when people nefariously come together and they work to subdivide land that should have gone through a subdivision platting process. And they did not, right? So, they split land, they sell it off, oftentimes to straw people who sell it further and split it further. So that's a significant theme of the bundle of land-related legislative actions that are moving forward. There's an interesting one down at the bottom, this HCR 2023 property tax refund and nuisance enforcement. And this is dealing with or attempting to address situations where private property owners have suffered from the development or the establishment of homeless encampments on their private property, and they have had then to incur costs for cleaning that up. And that this idea is that they would be eligible for a property tax refund for any costs that they incurred as a result of that. Now, how this concludes, we're not certain yet, but we know here in Pima County that a lot of the homeless encampments, they fall in the water courses, and the major waterways are prime locations for that. When you look at the Rito and the Santa Cruz, for example, but there are lots of water courses, washes that are on private property. And so they have become a network of both transit or mobility for the unhoused community and the establishment of encampments. And some of these, we've talked to property owners, they've realized costs in the tens of thousands of dollars to go ahead and clean up those encampments on private property. The next two slides are focused on water. So there's, I think there's close to 24 of these, just shy of 24. And so really the theme here is dealing with assured water supply, irrigation for farm activities, and then this whole thing again about assured water supply, right? That ties to that theme in Rio Verde, and also with the land subdividing activities that take place. There are a couple of others that deal with groundwater exempt wells, gray water, assured water supply certificate. Again, down at the bottom is HB 2195. That is on-site wastewater treatment facilities and permitting. And just a glance at that bill takes those on-site treatment facilities that are processing between 3,000 and 75,000 gallons per day and lets them operate under a general permit. And so our wastewater team can probably fill you in more on that if there's discussion or question points. I'm going to stop right here and see if you have any questions for me on either the land bills or the water bills. And again, I know I didn't go through these each individually. It was more to give you a point of reference to then go off to the state legislature website and take a deeper dive into any of these if you'd like. I'm going to touch on budget in a minute, but just wanted to see if you had any questions on the bills that have been introduced.
Yes, I have a question. I don't know, are we unmuted?
Yeah.
I'm wondering about the wastewater treatment facilities, if that's an increase in the flow permitted under a general permit or a decrease?
I believe it's, oh, sorry, you got an echo there. I believe it's an increase. So when I looked at that, you can still see my screen, correct? So when I looked at that, there's one section that has been added into it. So this is criteria for issuing a general permit. And I believe what this is doing is taking facilities that thus far were not eligible for a general permit and then bringing them into the eligibility criteria where between 3,000 gallons and less than 75,000 gallons, they are authorized to discharge under a general permit. And then, you know, if it meets the general permit rules and it's operated by a provider that is certified by the technology manufacturer. So I think it is an expanding of the allowance for facilities to operate under the general permit. And Jackson or someone on the team there may have additional information.
That's correct. And our only facility that's under a general permit is the Mount Lemon facility. It's a 20,000 gallon per day, I believe. 15, 17 and a half, 20, somewhere in there. So it's in that range, but it's been a general permit. And, you know, a while ago, we did have the fairgrounds was one of our facilities, and, you know, it's closed down and tied in with the rest of the system. But often because of the fair during the springtime, the monthly average would exceed the general permit limit. So there was conversation that we may have to build a Bad Cat facility out there. So that was part of our motivation to tie it into the rest of the conveyance system to get it to the bigger plant. So anyway, that one's off the table. It's just Mount Lemon. And so it really doesn't have any impact on us. But yes, it is an increase in the capacity to fit people in the general permit.
Thank you.
And I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to take a moment and just ad lib here. So where I got this information is on the Arizona State Legislature website. So, you know, if you go to that website and you can go to bill tracking and you can also then search right under here. It's azleg.gov/bills. And so you can go in here and you can search any of these bills, and they're organized by the bill number. And then you can drill in and open any of them. This happens to be HB 2060, irrigation non-expansion sub-area. And then there's a whole host of information that they provide there. So there's a bill history. It shows you the details of how it has moved through the session and where it is. There's bill status, which is just a shorter summary of that. Down at the far right here are documents. So you can go in and you can look at the introduced version, the House engrossed version. There are summary sheets that are here, fact sheets that give you a quick overview of it, where there have been amendments, where there are proposed amendments. You can open these up in PDF or in the web browser, and you can, you know, really mine a lot of good information out of there if you're so interested. So, all right. Any other questions on the legislative bills?
Scott has a question for you, Carmen.
Hi, Scott.
Point of clarification. Bills on the HCR 2023 property tax refund for nuisance reinforcement. You were talking about homeless encampments. What is that giving a tax credit, property tax credit to the landowner because there is a homeless encampment on their property?
That's correct. If they've incurred expenses from having to address cleanup of homeless encampments on their property.
I will clarify too for HB 2195, which is for the 75,000 gallon low. That's for on-site system. So that's like a community septic system or you know, some sort of neighborhood treatment wastewater system before it would even ever get to us. And so, you know, 75,000 gallons for area, that's pretty decent sized, to switch to a general permit as opposed to them getting an individual permit.
That's what my concern was. It just seems awfully big for a private management under a general permit. So, but in the county, it's probably not a big deal. Statewide, it could be pretty significant, I would think.
That was my question. I'm just curious if you happen to know who is the advocate for that? Who's introducing that? What's the?
Yeah, let's go take a look. So this, yeah, take a look here. So that's 2195, 22195, 21. So when you go to the legislative summary, it'll give you information on who introduced it. And let me just see where I found that previously. Wouldn't you know it? Oh, sponsors. Hendricks. Hendricks is who introduced it. Was that the question?
Yeah, or advocates. And just out of curiosity, if we think that that's going to go through, I mean, of all the thousands of bills that, 1,600 bills, this one that's going to make it very far. If you have any feel for that.
Okay. So it says right here, I'm looking, and I'll follow this up with Michael Rossi and get information back in the hands of Jackson and Jeanette. But it looks like as it's made it through all of these readings, right, it tells you majority concur refuse, minority concur refuse. But all the way down at the bottom here, I see transmit to Senate 228, and it says veto override. So it was introduced in the House, and it looks like it was vetoed in the Senate. So let me get some follow up on that, and I'll share that with Jackson and the team. Okay.
Thank you. That's great.
And then let me just touch real quick, just a few points of note on the state budget. So right now, no significant work has been done on the budget. It's likely that the governor's waiting for updated revenue information after April 15th tax filing deadline. Just interesting from maybe a political standpoint, it's a non-election year for the governor, so it's not likely that there's a great deal of urgency to move the budget along rapidly. Which is contrary to the legislature where they're all running for re-election this year. But at this point, nothing significant has happened relative to the budget. And so that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any other questions on this or beyond if you have them.
Any questions? Or Carmine on this? I guess I do have one question, and that is about the state budget. So what happens is as Governor Hobbs gives the budget to the legislation, and then they will revise it and send it back, or I thought it originated in the legislature, but no, starts with the governor.
I believe it does begin with the governor, right, laying out for the legislature a recommended budget that then they comment or seek to make adjustments to.
In that direction. Thanks. All right. Any other questions or clarifications that anybody would like to speak up about? Hearing none. Thanks so much for coming by and coming by Zoom.
Absolutely. Happy to see you all. I'll send this off to Jeanette so that she can relay it to you.
Sure.
Thanks much. Have a great day.
Do the director's update, and we're starting with staffing. Is that right, Jackson?
Good morning, everyone. I have a few different talking points, and feel free to interrupt me as I go if you have questions. But the first one is a staffing update. I'd just like to remind people we have 399 budgeted positions. The last update a few days ago showed that we had 29 vacancies. We got down to 25 vacancies, and we're trying to get it below 20 vacancies, but the ebb and flow of turnover, you never know. And so we're at 29 right now. We still have some growing pains coming from the, transition to our new pay system. The county transition from the old compensation protocol to a new one and put people in new classifications and new pay grades. And it was a very positive thing in general because most people in the county got a pay bump, an increase, which was intended to make us a little more market competitive out there. I think it was all in all successful because just one of the first things we have noticed in the short time that it transitioned to back on September 10th of 23. So in these handful of months so far, we are seeing typically more applicants for most of our jobs, which is an indication or could potentially be an indication that it's helping. But we still have some difficult to fill positions that we continue to find different ways to recruit, and we'll do what we have to do. But I would say in general, our overtime has been up a bit, and we have used external contract services to a higher degree. But it's the necessary evil because you still have to get work done. But all in all, I think we're headed in the right trend. We have had some applicants. We've gone through the full process of interviewing and offered positions to people. And we still have some that turn us down for the dollars that they're offered. That compensation package didn't quite interest them. And so they turned us down. But we'll continue to work on it as well as other issues from the transition. But all in all, it was successful and positive, but there's still little issues that will hopefully be wrapped up before too much longer. I would do a quick CIP update. We continue doing our 53 or $55 million budget of capital projects, but two projects in particular that were on there that are not looking likely to proceed. And one of those is the Canoa Ranch sewer extension. And that project was almost in our budget for approximately $9 million. I think it was 8.8 or 8.9 million. And our preliminary bid was closing in on 20 million. So that's a bit of a stretch to put that in. And if you recall, so back in the, a number of years ago, it's always been our goal to extend that sewer south, ultimately to our Arivaca Junction Lagoon at the extreme south limit of our service area. And it would be nice, that's our only remaining lagoon from a sole facility perspective. And it would be nice to get rid of it and put that water to better reuse. But also along that way, we, the county has upgraded and invested a fair amount at the Canoa Ranch historical preservation site. And they have made an intention of moving forward with an RV park at that location. And that is going to be on a standstill at the moment for various reasons. But the sewer line, they can still connect to the sewer line anytime they want it. They just have to go a little further north to do so. So that's still a possibility for them. But when we were looking at extending the sewer line on the east side of Interstate 19, we ran into some conflicts with ADOT that added significant cost to the project. So partway through the design effort, we switched and went back over to the west side of the interstate. Originally, that's where we thought the line would go. And we had worked with a developer on that side. But back at that time, we had hoped they would put in a sewer line when the state was putting in a new water line to the rest area and ultimately repaved the road after they did the water line. But once they did that, there was a moratorium, so they couldn't put in a new sewer line for a while. But the timing wasn't right for the developer at, back at that that state, there wasn't quite the growth they were planning on. But now they're ready to continue moving and going out there. And so we looked at, moving this sewer line to the west side. But again, that cost is quite a bit more than our budget. And so another option for the developer is to install a pump station to pump to the existing sewer just north of them right now. And so right now, that's kind of where it's looking like we're going. But we are going to go out. We had some questions about why the bid had jumped so much. And so we are going to go out and competitively bid it one more time and just make sure there wasn't some issue just with the contractor. And we'll see if it's still a possibility. And we should know within the next month if that's the case. But if it's not, if it still stays up in that 20 or more $1 million range, I don't see us moving forward with that project. And we would have a pump station project occur on the other side of the interstate, so that developer can continue growing. So that's that one. Also, the Prudence Pump Station project, that was a project we actually were getting some grant funding for to install a gravity sewer that was going to replace the Prudence Pump Station. The old Prudence Pump Station, we could shut it down because growth has happened enough that a gravity sewer would take its place. But the only route for the gravity sewer runs next to an abandoned landfill. And, we thought, well, we could skirt the edge of it, not a big deal. But we found that landfill is actually in regulatory remediation stages. And if we so much as look at it too closely, we could get pulled into a liability that we, would tremendously add cost to that. So we're going to use a little bit of the money instead of putting in that gravity pipeline. We're going to use a little money just to upgrade the pump station because it's going to need to stay in service for a while longer till we figure out what happens with that landfill site. Eric, do you have a question?
Thank you. Thank you. I guess part of this is precipitated on the fact I've been writing a few emails back and forth regarding the Canoa Ranch. There are two projects in Canoa Ranch, or one in Canoa Ranch, one to the south of that. That southern one is platted for either 1,100 or 1,300 homes. Now, are they going to be putting in a lift station also to handle their sewer outflow at this time? And if you're calling it temporary, is it anything like our temporary booster stations that have been in for 20 years and we still have them?
By definition in the county, when we say temporary, that means 20 years or more, just so we're on the same page. I don't recall, I was talking with Eric, he's not here today, unfortunately, but yeah, there is a project site further south, and I don't recall if it was 2 pump stations or if there was a way for them to tie into the other pump station. I can't remember off the top of my head, Eric, but we'll get you that update as soon as Eric's back. We'll pull those drawings out.
No, maybe at some point in time in April before our meetings, I can make an appointment with you and just sit down and we'll chat. If that's, I don't want to go over anybody's head or anything, but I definitely want to learn as much as I can about this.
You bet. You just give me a call to set that up and we'll go through that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the openness here. That's all I have.
Okay. Then just another moving, I'm skipping the safety update because I use that as part of the safety share. The sustainability update, just to let you know, we did install some, dewatering equipment at Corona de Tucson. It's Orage or Orage, however you say it. Everybody pronounces it different. But it was just some dewatering equipment to help us reduce the number of solids tanker loads when we waste over there. We thicken the sludge up now to like 5% and cut way back on the amount of hauls. So it's a sustainable, good project and makes more sense to do it that way. And it's pretty simple and it's working pretty well. Let's see. I think some of you did distribute the link It's
Yes, I
out
did.
There was a link to a report, we had the EPA fund some evaluations of potential site reuse, what do we need to do to fully utilize the old Roger Road site? As you recall, it shut down in 2013, and it's about 40 to 45 acres of very wonderful property. It looks like Jurassic Park right now, but we use it, the county uses it for different storage. We have just across the river is the Pima Animal Control Center, and they store a lot of pet food over there at our site. The Red Cross stores some supplies over there. Parks and Rec has taken over a corner of that property to use it to access the loop bike path for maintenance on the loop. So it's getting a little bit of use, but ultimately that's an ideal location if we can come up with some better longer term plans. And so it was a very good presentation of a mixed use between economic development and environmental restoration and natural habitat and some different things. And the report was very well done and had a lot of interest, and feel free to read it. And if you have questions or would like a presentation on it in the future, let us know. But it was a nice effort, and it didn't cost us any money. So,
What?
well,
Why didn't it cost you any money? Because
EPA funded it. They did a phase for one.
We got phase 2 ESA done October of 22.
Uh-huh.
And over the last year or so, we engaged with their another technical assist. So that was a brownfields technical assistance. Then we did a land revitalization program technical assistance, and they came in and evaluated potential reuses, and just some conceptualized community engagement type ideas.
Yeah. And I do see that Kimberly's on the phone. She's the brains behind that effort. That was a project she had been champion. And so I'll give her the floor just for a minute, just to steer us all in the right way. But going back to 2013, we sufficiently and appropriately closed the facilities per ADEQ criteria. But we looked at the cost to take the bulldozers, get the D11s in there, and let's take it down to grade or even below grade, because we have a lot of underground structures there. But the cost was tremendous, and even the value of the land was less than the cost to get it to that point. So we thought, well, let's leave it for now, and eventually we'll come up with some concepts. And that's what Kimberly pursued with the EPA. They provided that funding, but they did find there is a little bit of asbestos pipe over there and some lead-based paint, so those were the only two things, and they may even help us clean them up potentially, but we have some grant funding for that, but not enough, so we're working on some of that. But anyway, I'm still in Kimberly's thunder, and Kimberly, not to give them a repeat presentation, but just maybe summarize or clarify anything that we just stated, if you would.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Jackson, I'll go back to an earlier point that you made about the RWRAC project, and I'm not super familiar with it, but we have very good news in the sustainability realm for the department. We met earlier this week with our Department of Energy partner, and you may be aware that for the last 9 years, we've been working with them to track our energy usage and energy intensity. And essentially what that is, the energy we consume to treat a set amount of, remove a set amount of BOD from wastewater. And so in the last 9 years, our energy intensity has improved tremendously. Compared to 2014, we're now removing the same amount of BOD using 58% of the energy we did 9 years ago. So that is tremendous. And so we had committed back then to reducing our energy intensity by 25% by this year. And we have far exceeded that. And we did that last year. We're at around 30% improvement in energy intensity. So I thought that was very noteworthy. And since Jackson was talking sustainability, I think that is something that once we get the final numbers will be a big thing to highlight for the department. And as far as the Roger Road site, yes, it's been a fantastic project, and EPA and ADQ have been super supportive. And the only thing I would add is that hopefully in May of this year, we'll get very good news about a grant we applied for back in the fall to do the cleanup that Jackson referred to. But I understand that there's a lot of community interest in the property from NGOs and so forth, and even conversations about how it may fit into this designation for the Santa Cruz River. No decisions have been made, I understand, but it's just encouraging that administration and the Board of Supervisors may be open for possible opportunities to support that urban wildlife designation. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Scott Oldendorf for Jackson and Kimberly. In the day when you shut down Roger, there was even talk of University of Arizona making it into a like fish farm, growing fish. And there was even talk of having movie companies coming out there and having the next apocalypse movie for getting money out there. Did those all fall by the wayside years ago?
Yeah, some of the early efforts involved starter businesses with the U of A, seeing if, you can grow algae for energy source or, different projects in general. But unfortunate part of some of the new startups, they didn't have much funding. And so they were kind of hoping the county was going to fund some of that. And we were looking for somebody to come in and spend some money over there. So we didn't quite meet the intended outcome, and we've moved on. But this new effort will open up some new light and maybe bring some other suitors to our doorstep for a conversation. So
yeah. And the group at the University of Arizona that we have been working on in the reuse planning is the College of Architecture and Landscape Architecture, a gal by the name of Mackenzie Waller, I believe. And she had her students out at the site several times, and they came up with really cool designs to reduce the cost of reusing the site. And their idea is to incorporate a lot of the existing structures into what, the park or open space that may come next for the property. And I can share those with you if you're interested. I thought they were very cool concepts.
Sounds great. It's exciting that there's this sort of multi-dimensional reuse being considered, particularly with regard to engaging with NGOs in the region and thinking environment, but also thinking how do we help our economy. So this is really exciting news. I look forward to reading this report.
I tell everyone I'm holding out for the Grizzly Bear Rehabilitation Center.
Oh, right.
All right. Let me just move on for time's sake. I have item E. We did, the deputy directors and myself and Max DeSanti of our Compliance Regulatory Affairs Office, we finally were able to match up with ADQ down in Phoenix and have a face-to-face meeting, and we've had a follow-up meeting with them. But they've had a tremendous changing of the guard, a lot of turnover and new faces and people we had not met previously. We've seen correspondence or heard of, but we wanted to go build some relations and share with them some of our concerns of some of the things that weren't quite making sense to us in regulatory arena, and have just a candid conversation. And so I asked Max just to real quickly summarize the key points that we discussed with him, just so you have that. Go ahead, Max.
Sure. So we first met earlier in the year. I had 1 hour meeting with Karen Peters and Trevor Bajori and Amanda Stone. Karen Peters is their CEO. And we had a 1 hour meeting and we brought up 12 or 13 topics. You can imagine that's really enough to just kind of introduce the topic and discuss it and save it for later. Then we had a follow-up meeting where we discussed 6 of our most pertinent and we thought immediate success, latent topics. And I'll just run through those briefly and kind of give the status of where those are. So the first item was some new language that has appeared in our aquifer protection permits based on some new interpretation of Arizona Administrative Code. And it sets some requirements for what they call the operator in direct responsible charge of the facility. And it says that that operator in direct responsible charge shall perform the site visit daily and sign in to the logbook. And that presents a problem, a challenge for us because we have so many sub-regional facilities, and it sets this, management level, facilities manager to, drive to each facility, and there's half a day of work already. And so we're trying to nail out why this person has to do it, or where this requirement that of any specific grade operator has to do it. And I actually had yesterday morning, I gave an update that I pinged them and didn't have an update yet, but I did have a meeting yesterday with Ethan Leiter, who is the manager in their groundwater protection unit, and we were still at a crossroads of interpretation of this rule. And in my mind, it says pretty clear that it says a grade 3 or 4 operator, grade 3 or 4 facility must have an on-site operator. And he is reading that to mean a grade 3 or 4 facility must have a grade 3 or 4 on-site operator. And our difference in that is, 98% of the time, that's probably true. But there are hypotheticals where the only way to solve that is to call somebody from another facility and say, hey, go drive over there and set foot and sign in this book. And it just seems like
it just doesn't make sense. And we also are very SCADA in tuned, where every one of our facilities, they have all of their critical data shown at our operation control center. That's a control room at Tres Rios, and we have 24/7 coverage of a grade 3 or 4 operator in there. So there's always somebody paying attention 24/7. So it just makes no sense. It seems like an overkill, and we're pushing back on it. So
and we discussed that too. And he and I both agreed that how the rule is now, that there is no allowance for the remote operator, our SCADA, our operations control center, to perform this daily site inspection or visit. And so we proposed that as another possible way forward to kind of, allow us to operate effectively. But he is going to have ADEQ's legal rules analyst go in, because we're still at a crossroads of interpretation, and the rule shouldn't be that way.
And just also so you know that ADEQ has raised the cost of providing individuals with certifications, and it got quite pricey, and we require it of all of our employees at different grades so that there's a promotional and progressive, line of opportunity for people. But we reimburse people for that, and it's very expensive. And if they go to requiring something like that, we'd have to have way more higher grade people and spend a lot more money on certifications. And it's hard for some people. Those tests are not just, lucky guess, true or false. This is stuff that a lot of people don't pass those tests. So we might run out of employees if we had to provide that many certified 3 and 4 operators. So just so, and I think it's a little bit of a overkill myself.
And more to come on that one when they, their rules analyst interprets it in a legal word by word way. One of the next items was discussing possibilities about removing a codified prohibition for direct discharge in the Sabino Canyon Creek watershed. And that comes up as we are evaluating how best to move forward with our Mount Lemon treatment plant. And the difficulties that we've been having with the U.S. Forest Service and the special use permit. And we have a pathway, and we're navigating through it, and we have a plan, but it came up because we currently cannot discharge into the Sabino Canyon watershed, and that's an old historic decision from on-site, septic treatment systems and poor water quality in that area. And it's not quite the case anymore, but there's still a prohibition. So we just probed them to see what their thoughts on it were, because it would require rule change, and that would take some time. But ADEQ is supposed to follow up with EPA to see if EPA has any additional background information on it, because as we try to think back we remember a consent decree that EPA made ADEQ do this because of poor water quality in the area, but nobody can really find it exactly. So we're trying to figure out where it goes, but ADEQ didn't have any real opposition to it. It's just we need to find out more information. Okay. We had 4 more topics. We've had a lot of we have regular inspections, and we had in October and February we had a couple unannounced inspections. We felt that was they're quite disruptive. It's well within their right, but we'd appreciate they save it for the facilities that need unannounced inspections, the one that have regular problems.
We just want to be able to have there's so much information that's asked for. You can't just show up at a site unannounced and expect somebody just to be able to have that at their fingertips. There's different people that control and distribute data, and we need to make sure they're available. So we just suggest they give us a little heads up so we can get that stuff ready for you to make it more of a productive opportunity. And ultimately, it seemed like they agreed, and just quantifying how much time is a benefit and not. So,
our latest inspection last week, they gave us 1 week notice, which we think is fine.
Which is fine. Hey, let's stop real quick. Matt, you have a question?
Just a comment about that Sabino Creek prohibition. My recollection is there's actually a statutory provision that embodies that prohibition. So it might take an act of the legislature, but I would think that with the lobbying potential the county has, and if stakeholders are on board, and there's a lot of good reasons for returning the flow to the creek, shouldn't be that difficult a barrier to overcome.
Items. One is ADEQ is requiring that an engineer of record seal record drawings. That presents a problem in the planning and drawing phase. So ADEQ is following up to see whether that's just an internal miscommunication. Following that, we had when we're designing a new system, a new sewer system, we have to use a capacity equation, use a gallons per person per day, and the standard figure that's used isn't appropriate for our area. So we're trying to work through getting, I think the standard figure is 80 gallons per person per day, but with conservation now, we're trying to see if we can get 56 gallons per person per day, which is a more reasonable local number to use for planning and designing. Then finally, we requested to look at having a permanent variance in place that allows for use of plastic or polymer pipes for a sewer when doing a river crossing. The standard rule says you must only use ductile iron pipe, and that is not an effective material for wastewater. And so currently we do variances for every construction project, and it just takes time and money and effort. So we're asking for a standard variance. So a lot of these are still requiring additional follow-up, but trying to get the problem solved.
Thank you, Matt, for that. And my last item, sorry to be so long today, but the last item, we had a unplanned failure of a 48-inch pipeline over at Tres Rios a couple of weeks ago. When we built RUP in 2013, we used the old primary clarifiers, but we shut down the old high purity oxygen bioreactor. So that underground vault that was used as a method to put a pipeline through that vault to take the primary influent after the primary treatment over to the new biological process. Well, it's pretty much out of sight. It's underneath a big concrete tank, but and like I said, that pipeline has been in there 10 years now. It's a mild steel pipeline with a concrete lining in it. And we started to notice, just due to some not normal inspection, but somebody pulled a hatch and looked in there and saw some water in that old HBO tank and wondered, well, where's that coming from? And after a while, we realized that pipe had corroded the top half of the pipe was severely corroded in a very short time frame. Obviously, H2S attack, or, the typical corrosive gases and stuff as you convey water, sewage. And so we knew that we were going to have to come up with some plan to replace that pipeline. Well, it's pretty much, I won't say it's failed, because you still got flow going where it needs to go. But Jeff and the team, they were able to get a CCTV camera through the pipeline, and fortunately, the only real damage to the pipeline is in the HPO reactor, but where it leaves the reactor and goes underground and under many other infrastructures and stuff, it appears to still be in good shape there, which is a great situation. But we've mobilized many factions to basically go in there and run a parallel high-density polyethylene pipeline, but the fittings and the materials might take as much as 5 months to get those. So that doesn't sound like much of an emergency if it'll take that long. So fortunately, we have a pretty good game plan for, basically shutting down the flow, going into the pipeline and intercepting it and pumping it across the street to the reactor, to the, biological process. And we will go in and line, just like we do a lot of lining projects in the conveyance system. We will be lining that 48-inch pipe with a double lining. I guess I understand it's an exterior lining and then the interior lining, and just make sure it's well supported, and that will take the place of the old pipe. But we wonder, in our overall infrastructure, there are many hidden places of this facility, especially a facility like Tres Rios that I believe was originally, most of it started being built in 77, I think, where a lot of it came online. And of course, we did upgrades and some rehab and some expansions in 2013, but there's still a lot of hidden corners and places you don't ever get to except once in maybe every leap year or something. But we're going to have to look at some other ways to keep tabs on some of the infrastructure that isn't in the normal daily routine of being observed and watched. So lots of interesting things, but that will be an unbudgeted repair that fortunately we have some capital money since, we're not doing some of the projects I talked about earlier. We should be able to keep moving along, but it's quite the effort to see everybody working and coming up with a solution to a pretty serious issue. And we're still in business. And we did ask our friends, that Agua Nueva facility, we have Jacobs running that facility for us, and they've been running about 25 million gallons a day. And the rest of the flow that comes by the pipeline to the plant over there continues on to Tres Rios. So we told them, hey, intercept more of that flow and try and get your plant up to 32 million gallons per day, which is the capacity, so that we can run less at Tres Rios for this period of time to minimize flows we have to manage to do the repair. And so we're working through all of it. It's a very coordinated effort with a lot of stakeholders. So that's my updates for today. Sorry they were long, but a lot of interesting things going on.
Fascinating. Lots of interesting stuff today. Any comments or questions for either Jackson or Mac? No. That was really interesting, and a lot of good work you guys are doing, your whole team. Moving on to item number 3 under the discussion and action. It's the financial plan draft review with Ellen Holton. Are you?
I'm here. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. You have the financial plan draft that was included in your packet. I'm going to go over the executive summary and the attachments at the end, but I don't plan to spend a lot of time going over the information in the middle, since that is more informative to the board. The executive summary is what we have talked about on several different occasions. During the course of the financial plan, we expect to issue just under 300 million of new sewer revenue bonds or obligations to fund future capital projects. You can see on the screen that they are steadily increasing from 54 million to 67 to 82 to 93. They're going up mainly because of additional projects and the Sarita plant in the out years. We will also be using unrestricted cash to prepay debt at about the $20 million per year range over the next years as well. And we are recommending a no change in the sewer rates for fiscal year 25, but beginning in fiscal year 26, requesting annual increases of 3% for the sewer utility fee and an annual increase of 1.75 for the sewer volume fee and the service charge. Does anybody have any questions about the basic recommendations? These, as I indicated, these are not new. These are things that we have gone over. It seems like 3 or 4 times, but it probably is only a couple with this committee. Hearing no questions, I'm just going to scroll back to the end of the attachments and try to make my screen bigger so that I can see it. These are the basic assumptions that we have gone over previously. You can see that the first line is the population growth, showing under 1% growth, but steady growth over the next number of years. We have layered in here the user rate increases starting in 26, both the volumetric increase as well as the service charge, the admin fee. You see that we are holding the volume rate at 1. The population is also going up slightly, but continually over the next several years. We have also factored in increases in annual expenses, slightly higher this year at 6%, 4% for next year, and then 3% in the out years. And then the capital projects. Again, as Jackson indicated earlier, $53 million, and then the steady uptick as we move into the Sarita plant, if and when we have contractual agreements. The next is, again, very difficult to read, but something you have seen before. It is the assumptions up at the top, then the basic cash flow on here. We have your net revenues going from 97 in the last year, 89 in the current year, 89 in the forecasted for this year, 85 basically in the budget for the following year and going on. We've got the debt service payments. We have this pink line here is where we are accounting for the participation of Sarita in the build of the Sarita plant. If that comes to fruition, that will fall into other lines, but we put it separate so we would be able to see it and track it. And if it doesn't come to fruition, it will be easy for us to pull it out. We are maintaining our ratio, the rating agency ratio of 1.3. We are not well above it, but we are above it, which is good. And then the final piece that we always pay attention to is our ending unrestricted cash balance. We want to have that number at $50 million or higher. You can see that there are a couple of years at the out years where it's just slightly below the 50 million. I am not concerned about that at this point because they are in the out years. And we know that we have had more growth in the biogas revenue that would more than likely cover any shortfall that's there. Are there any questions?
Ellen, this is Jackson. If you go back to your executive summary, item 3, the increases are item 3 on the executive summary.
We're trying to get there. There you go.
So both increases, the sewer volume and sewer sewer utility. I read that wrong. I'm like 3% and 1.75. It's both of the sewer volume and charge are 1.75. It's right. I misread it. So never mind. Disregard my comment.
That's okay.
Eric, you're next. You got your hand up.
Yes, let me go back to the Appendix A that when we're talking about population growth, one of the things that I'm curious about, population doesn't grow equally across the county. It's higher in one area and maybe even decreasing in another. And so it does have an effect on the needs of those areas with the plants and all that are currently in place and the new plants being designed. And I think it's a little difficult just to take a number and say, okay, population growth is at this level, when really the southeastern portion of the county is growing at a faster rate than, say, the northwestern portion of the county. And with that, I think you have to look at your costs and based on area much more closely than just to give it a broad overview.
Eric, I'll start. Ellen can jump in, but the population growths are primarily just to show an increase in the customer base for calculating the revenues that they pay for their sewer fees. That's the important value there. Our cost that we generate to submit each year for our O&M costs and our capital costs are that specific detailed by area. We know which plants are getting closer to capacity and will need an expansion versus which plants won't. And yes, we do more geographical planning for those parts of our business. This is just really for the revenue on the user base, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Ellen?
You are correct.
And we have a comment from Matt. Your hand is raised.
Thank you, Claire. Alan, I did have just a couple of questions about some of the text in the middle of the plan.
Sure.
And so pages 9 and 10 talk about cash reserves. And last meeting, we talked about the reserve funds that we have, and you mentioned the 20 million emergency reserve fund and the about almost 25 million operating reserve fund. And then there's these other two reserve funds, but as I look at them, they're really a different sort of fund. They contain monies that are earmarked or committed for certain debt payments. So to me, it's not the same sort of reserve fund. Am I looking at those right?
You are. You will notice on the debt service reserve fund, the second sentence says on a monthly basis, the county transfers 1/12 of the budgeted annual debt reserve to this reserve account. That is a reserve account with another bank. It is not in the Pima County coffers, if you will. It is part of our debt agreements that we transfer the cash. So the cash is with the bank that we're going to pay.
Okay, thank you. Another one has to do with table 2 that's on page 5. I think that's it. Let's see. Excuse me just a minute.
Table 2, is this
Yeah,
the
table,
project costs?
figure 2 on page 9. There it is.
Page 9?
Right. The talking about the planned prepayments. There you go.
Okay.
So the numbers that I'm seeing in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th column that says total planned payments, should there be a correlation between those numbers and the numbers that are on Appendix B down in the prepayment section towards the bottom? I thought there should be, and I tried to compare them and they didn't add up quite right. So I just want to know if I'm looking at that right, if there's a reason for the variation there.
Yeah. Ellen, do you want me to take that?
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Matt, you're correct. It's 2 different calculations. So the one calculation at the bottom of the rate workbook, that's the cash outlay. This is the actual principal and interest if you hadn't made the debt service. So it's 2 different calculations, and I know it is a little bit confusing, but there isn't a one-to-one correlation. So in fiscal year 23, the 29 million, that's not what would show up on the rate workbook because that wasn't the cash outlay.
Okay.
And I could probably put a schedule together that shows you the difference. It might be easier visually that way because if you want, I can do that. Just send you the difference, how the one is calculated versus the other.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. I don't have that stuff up on my screen right now. I apologize. But I think it's easier visually to see it if I show you the 2 calculations side by side where you can see what's included in each and what the differences are.
Yeah, and that'd be a good thing to have at our next subcommittee meeting. So just no hurry. We'll look at it then, and I appreciate the offer.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Thank you.
And then I do have more
Matt.
comments and questions about certain aspects of the plan here, mainly relating to our 1.3 target and also the cash requirements. And I thought it was interesting when I reread what's on page 11, and it talked about our committee's action back in 2017 and deciding that we should have discussions about possible rate increases if the debt service ratio fell below 1.2 or that our unrestricted cash reserves fell below 25 million. And so one thing I'd like to explore at the subcommittee meeting is the differences between the 1.2 and the 1.3, whether they're floors or targets or goals, and how our committee should approach those, whether what we decided back in 2017 is the best guidance or not. So I'll be interested in diving into those 2 requirements a little deeper at the subcommittee meeting if that's okay.
Absolutely. We will pull the information so that we have it and get it to you ahead of time so that we can have a fulsome discussion.
Okay.
Matt, just one moment, Matt. We have a comment by Jeanette here.
Michelle, if you could forward that information to me, I will forward it to the committee members, please.
Yes, of course.
The comparison between the debt service and that
The
thing.
DP,
Yes,
Prepayment.
the prepayment. If you could forward that to me, sorry, I couldn't get my words in earlier. If you could forward that to me and I'll forward it to everybody, please.
And then Matt, you had another comment, and then we have another comment by Rob. So
Yeah, just one final thing, again, for the subcommittee meeting, Alan and Michelle. Talking about the debt service ratio, on page 10 at the bottom, you mentioned that bond rating agencies have historically expected to see the 1.3. If in the information that you gather, if you could, if there is some written material from the agencies or other sources that help us in this analysis, I think that would be helpful. And then also you mentioned towards the end, the bond rating agencies having issued reports explaining the analysis of our conditions, financial conditions. If we could see a copy of those reports, or at least the pertinent portions that present that analysis, I think that would be helpful too.
sure, we get a letter from the bond rating agencies every time we issue debt. We go through 2 ratings calls. The last time we did that was in August, before our last sale that happened in October. We can certainly provide those 2 letters to Jeanette so that she can share with everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you on the 9th then at our subcommittee meeting.
I'm going to try and move us along a little bit, Matt. Thank you so much. And if you have other things that come up for you with Ellen, don't hesitate to email Jeanette and she can pass those on to her. So,
okay, great. Thanks.
Super. Rob, did you have a comment?
Hi, Ellen. I'm going to be seeing my supervisor soon, and I just want, and I know that I'll be getting this question about the 1.75 increase, and that goes to all user classes, right?
Yes, it does. Was that, sorry, you cut out. Was that the only question that you had? That is ubiquitous across all user classes.
You're muted.
Okay, I think that's his comment. He's muting and unmuting, but you could just give us a thumbs up.
Yeah, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we're gonna move down to the next item, which is financial subcommittee report, and that is for Matt.
Yes, thank you. I think I could just allude to the next subcommittee meeting, which is April 9th at 8 o'clock. Again, a Zoom meeting projected to go till 10. No other report. The committee did not meet since our last regular meeting in February. So looking forward to the discussion to kind of do that deeper dive into the financial plan and come back with a recommendation on support for the plan to go to the board.
And Matt, with Allison leaving the committee, you now are at 3 members, if I'm not mistaken. So Kirsten did indicate she would be willing to serve on the committee, but if anyone else is, please let Jeanette know and we'll get you another committee member, Matt. But we'll take volunteers first, and we have 1 volunteer. If we hear from others, we'll do a vote.
I didn't think that Allison was on my subcommittee. Armando was.
I'm sorry, Armando. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so if Kirsten can take his place, that'll be great. But I think that leaves us full. But Eric came on the last time.
To learn all these ins and
Thank you.
outs. Fortunately, I can't make your next meetings, but thereafter, I can join.
Matt, I need to let you know that I will only be able to attend the first hour of that meeting due to a work commitment.
Okay, thanks. We'll save the important stuff for the second hour.
Moving down the list, CIP Subcommittee Report, Asia.
Thanks, Claire. I did want to let everyone know, I think I still need to do this myself, but there is a doodle poll out there to schedule our next meeting. So we have not met again since our last meeting. I don't have anything else to report, but we will be meeting coming up to be a date to be scheduled. So if the committee members make sure to do that if you haven't already. And it sounds like we probably have some things to talk about, maybe even about some of those existing CIP changes that you talked about, Jackson. So hopefully you'll be able to talk about that a little bit more at the committee meeting too. I think we typically we're looking at more of the further out scheduling, but it sounds like we also typically talk about the current year, if that sounds good to you.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. And then we have the 2023-24 period 8 expense and revenue summary. And Andy, I believe you're going to give that.
Yes, good morning. I'll share my screen real quick for you. Okay, so just a recap of where we started the year. Our operating expenses were budgeted at 96.7 million. Right now, our projections are 99.4. Some of the drivers of that are some inflationary expenses that are unanticipated, such as electricity and chemicals, as you see in the note down there in note 1. We have some of that offset by some savings in personnel. It's never great that we have vacant positions, but we do have some, so that is offsetting some of the costs in the O2 appropriation or the supplies and services. Another good news is that some of the revenue is coming in a lot higher. So we're actually anticipating out of our $194.6 million revenue budget, we're anticipating $203 million. So an increase of 8.6 on the revenue side. The other thing to note here is we did add this rating ratio. So in the budget, the rating ratio was 1.34. Right now, it's forecasted to be 1.37. So that was an additional piece that we've added to this summary. Just so wanted to bring you all aware of that. That was really all I had as far as the summary, unless anybody had any questions.
Any questions? Oh,
Matt,
Matt.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. Couple questions. One, on those supplies and services, you're showing actual expenses currently about 37 million and projecting over 63 million by the end of the year. So we've got a third of the year left, and that's like more than a 2/3 increase from where we are now. Is that really how it's going to be? And it just seems like a huge amount to spend in 4 months' time compared to what we've already spent earlier in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we work closely with the department in their forecasting at each unit within the department and how they're projecting their final billings to come in. So Jackson, I don't know if you want to speak to that, to Matt's point, but that is what the forecasting is showing and how each division is forecasting their total expense for the current fiscal year.
You know, I do have Tracy's on the call too, and she helps track those meetings and stuff, and she may have a specific answer. But, you know, when you look at our spend rate on the 12-month fiscal year, every year it pretty much tracks pretty consistent that the first month of the year is extremely low spending because you're still closing out the previous fiscal year. And so you're trying to defer all those costs to the end of the year. So obviously the last month is the highest and the first month is the lowest. And then the remaining months are fairly consistent historically. But Tracy, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but have you noticed any, Matt makes a good point, how high the remaining 3 months of, or actually this is through February. So it's 4 months, right? Yeah. So 4 months. Tracy, any comment? Okay, well,
She's muted.
her microphone isn't working, or? Okay, we'll pass on that, but I don't
Okay.
think that's too unusual, Matt, to see that lion's share of the cost in the last 4 months like that, because if you look at the first month again, it's usually half of what the normal is, and the last month picks up that difference. So I'll have to look at it closely. It's a good observation, but it's probably reasonably close. And like
Okay,
Mandy said, we meet
let me
every
move.
these forecasts very closely.
Yeah, let me move down a few lines and make a similar point about the depreciation. So again, we're right now at 38 million and projecting 64 million. It would seem to me that that's something that's a little easier to project or budget for, because it's kind of, I don't know if consistent is the right word, but more easily anticipatable, I guess. So is that incorrect how I'm looking at it, or is there some unusual circumstance that's resulting in the depreciation to be so heavily loaded towards the end of the year?
Well, and I think it's similar to what Jackson said. The depreciation starts to get caught up as you get through the year. The first month, we typically are wrapping up the year-end financials from prior year, so you won't see that post in the first month. So that could be a catch-up, and I can definitely take that as a takeaway item for me to look into to see if that's in fact what happened this year.
Okay, thanks. And just one final thing down in the revenues. The capital contributions, I know that's very difficult to project and budget for, so I'm not surprised that there's a big variance there. But the other revenue line, and I guess the explanation is mostly interest. We projected almost, or budgeted almost 3 million, and we're going to more than double that by the end of the year. Was there, what happened that created an interest level that was so much higher than what we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year?
So keep in mind, when we're working on the fiscal year 24 budget, it is the fall before that. And at that point in time, the interest rates were not as great as they are today. So, and we do layer in some conservatism when we're doing the budget as well. So fall of, I guess it would be 22 is when we're starting to put this together. So that's a significant amount of time has passed since we started putting together the adopted budget for fiscal year 23-24. So just keep that framework in mind. So the interest rates back then probably were not as stable or as good as they are today.
Okay.
And Mandy, do you mind if I just add some context? I mean, Mandy's absolutely correct. When we're budgeting, oftentimes for the interest, we're budgeting in the 3 to 3.5%. Just again, we don't want to be caught on the other side of this, like, hey, we think interest rates are going to be up around 5%. We are actually getting interest earnings close to 5%. So there is a, 1.5 to 2% difference between the amount that was budgeted closer to a 3.5% rate versus what we're actually achieving right now, which is closer to 5. So that is causing the difference.
But again, we don't want to be, we're doing the same thing next year. I'll be very honest with you. I think we're using 375. Because, you know, if interest rates start to drop, we don't want to get caught behind where we were assuming interest was going to come in very strong next year and then it doesn't. And then the department is caught, you know, in a bad situation where we have the inverse. We budgeted 6 and the actuals are 3, because that did happen to us a couple years ago when interest rates were close to 0. We were caught the other way. So.
Thank
Okay,
you for that,
thank
Michelle.
you.
Did that answer all of your questions, Matt? And I do have the takeaway for the depreciation, and I'll get back to you on that piece.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Else have any questions? All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is the CWAC report. And do we have it's for it?
So they said they didn't have a meeting,
Oh,
but they have one scheduled for next week.
oh, next. Okay, so there will be a meeting next Wednesday and we'll hear at our next committee report. Thank you. Do we have any future agenda items? I think it would be really great to have, what did I write? I'd love to have a fuller presentation on the Roger Road site, if that's possible.
You bet.
I also was really intrigued by the energy intensity. I don't know if we have time for both at next meeting, but I think it would be great to get something like that over the summer to hear more in detail about energy use. Is that possible?
Yes.
Do others have ideas for future agendas? We are going into the period where we're moving out of some of our standard meeting agenda items and we have a little more time to add things. So anybody have other things they'd like to add to the agenda or for future items?
I'd like to have Roger go.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. All right. So, and hearing none, I will have another call to the audience. Oh, sorry, Steve. Yes, you had something to add.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this, but I recently saw in the national news PFAS in treated sewage that has been placed on agricultural fields was sort of described as this horrible pollution that these agencies are getting away with foisting off onto the public. So I don't know if we've had any of that kind of talk around here, but the issue of PFAS in our own biosolids, we certainly have looked at and addressed, and we feel pretty comfortable with, but the outside drivers may place us in a different position than we want to be in. So I wonder if this is something we want to discuss in the near future or put off until the EPA acts on the issue.
Yeah, I think that seems great. Anybody else have an item they'd like to bring forward? All right. We'll move on to call to the audience. I just wanted to mention this in mind. We have lost 2 really great long-term members in the last month. Armando and Allison, both huge contributors over the years. Is it possible to provide them with some sort of small gift or a thank you that we could do for our
So,
members?
you know, what we used to do is when a member became a member, we gave a fill-a-bomb to the members at the initial. But the glass studio is out of business. The county's not in the business of fill-a-bombs anymore. So we can evaluate something else, you know, which is best at the beginning, because you never know how somebody's terms are going to go, or, you know, like what happened with Allison. She had to leave real quickly. But I know that Supervisor Hines is putting on one of the upcoming agendas a thank you for Armando, because not only the 25-ish years on this committee, but almost 29 years, I think, on
I
the
know.
planning and zoning or some other committee he served on.
Well,
So
yeah,
they're
yes.
going to thank him for the dedication. And I'm not sure what that will look like, but in here, I think it would be worthwhile talking about how do we recognize the dedication and the time that people put into this, being on this committee
Right.
and listening to me. It's got to be worth something, you know?
We're so much wiser about our safeties.
Yeah, that's right. Good. That's my main goal. Right there.
I know. It's like we know way more. I think about more things because of that. I would love to provide a note, maybe that we could both sign to them. Would that be possible to both
Sure.
of them?
Sure.
And I don't know about it, but anything, just a recognition would be just a lovely thing. Both of them were really
We
big.
will come up with
contributors.
something and then with new members, you know, like Kirsten here, and then we got Alan coming, you know, what are we gonna do? And then other new members of recent time, I don't think we did the Philibum because they're not there anymore, and that was what we did. at
I
some
don't
point.
think you did. I'm just.
Yeah.
But
I can't tell you how far back that's gone now that we haven't done that.
but I like giving it.
Never get mine.
I like giving something at the end too, because I mean, strangely, I mean, you do get very connected to this group and to your commitment over time. It's a lot of.
And you learn people's perspectives.
Yeah,
and
it's
like
really,
family.
it's
Yeah.
a really great group. So, so I'd love to be part of that if that would be possible. Any other comments or calls to any audience members? The vast masses out there want to comment on the meeting? No. All right.
The future, something that might take some time, but just to look at the population and flows coming to the wastewater treatment plant. Because we're seeing such a decrease in the volume or the demand on the potable supply. I think it'd be really interesting just to see.
Yeah, we have more customers and fairly, you know, demand has not matched customers. The strength of sewage has gone up, you know, but definitely the volumes have, you know, maintained flat. And Jim maybe remembers even better, but like right now between our two big plants, we have right at 55 million gallons a day by our flow meter system. And I think at one time we had as high as 58, or it might have been. So yeah, there's been some drop off, but we've been at this 55 for a while. Even though there's a slow growth, we're still stuck there. So we're offsetting you know, conservation is offsetting the growth factor, and low flow toilets, low flow shower heads, all that stuff is really definitely showing a mark, but we'll see if we can pull something up.
I mean, I'm only looking at it from our surface area, but you know, we're getting. Just amazing, I was looking at the 10-year, how it's been very consistent.
Yep, we'll see what we can pull up.
Pretty great, actually. It's really great. Any other comments that anybody has? If not, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Motions to adjourn. And 1 second, Rob. All right. You guys, just duke it out every time. All right. Any discussion? Not hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Great to see
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Go Cats.
Go Cats.
Great meeting.